The phone call shattered the mundane quiet of my Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing structural plans, the scent of blueprints and stale coffee filling my small office, when my mobile vibrated violently across the desk. It was an unknown number, local area code. Usually, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Is this Mr. David Carter?" a calm, professional female voice asked. "Yes, speaking," I replied, already feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Calls like this rarely brought good news. "Mr. Carter, I'm calling from St. Jude's Hospital. Your wife, Letitia Carter, has been involved in a car accident. She's here now, stable, but the paramedics brought her in about 20 minutes ago." The world tilted. Accident? Letitia? Stable? The words snagged in my brain, a small buoy in a sudden flood of panic. Stable? What happened? Is she okay? My voice sounded distant, thin. "The details are limited right now, sir. It was a collision. She's conscious and undergoing assessment in the emergency department. The doctor will speak with you when you arrive." "I'm on my way." I didn't say goodbye, just slammed the phone down. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my keys, my wallet. Structural plans fluttered to the floor. Forgotten. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden silence. Letitia. Accident. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic lights and blurred taillights. My mind raced, replaying the conversation. "Stable," she said, "stable." But what did that mean? Broken bones? Internal injuries? Conscious. That was good, wasn't it? Beneath the immediate fear for her physical safety, a colder, deeper unease began to surface, something I'd been trying to push down for months. Letitia was supposed to be at a regional marketing conference an hour north of the city today. St. Jude's was downtown, miles off her supposed route. Why was she here? The questions echoed the ones that had been whispering in the back of my mind lately. The late nights she blamed on deadlines, the hushed phone calls she took in the other room, the faint, unfamiliar scent that sometimes clung to her clothes when she came home. The growing distance between us, subtle but undeniable, like a hairline crack spreading slowly across a foundation. I'd tried talking to her. A few weeks ago, over a tense dinner, I'd asked if everything was okay. "We seem off," I'd said, hating the weakness in my voice. She'd given me that dismissive little wave of her hand, the one that always made me feel small. "Don't be silly, David. Work's just been crazy. You know how it is." Her smile hadn't reached her eyes. Had she been lying then? Was the conference just a story? Where was she really going when the accident happened? Who was she with? The thought felt like a betrayal in itself, thinking such things while she was lying in a hospital bed. Guilt warred with suspicion, churning in my gut. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white. "Stop it," I told myself. "She needs you. Focus on getting there. Focus on her being okay." But the cold dread wouldn't dissipate. It clung to me, a chilling premonition mixed with the acrid taste of fear. The city traffic felt malicious, deliberately slowing me down, each red light an eternity. I honked my horn pointlessly at a car ahead, frustration boiling over. Get there. Just get there. Find out she's all right. Find out everything is all right. But deep down, a part of me already knew. Everything wasn't all right. It hadn't been for a long time, and I had a sickening feeling that the accident wasn't the only thing I was about to confront. The hospital loomed ahead, a beige monolith against the gray afternoon sky. It looked impersonal, indifferent, a place where lives hung in the balance every single day. My life felt like it was hanging there now, suspended between hope and a dread I couldn't name but felt in my bones. I found a parking spot in the multi-story garage, the screech of tires echoing strangely in the concrete structure. My legs felt unsteady as I got out of the car, the walk towards the main entrance feeling miles long. The automatic doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, admitting me into the sterile, antiseptic-smelling lobby. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a flat, unforgiving glow on the polished floors and the pale faces of people waiting on hard plastic chairs. The air was thick with a mixture of anxiety, disinfectant, and quiet suffering. I approached the information desk, my heart still pounding erratically. "Excuse me," I said, my voice hoarse. "My wife, Letitia Carter, was brought in earlier. Car accident." The receptionist, a woman with tired eyes and tightly pulled back hair, typed efficiently into her computer. "Carter? Letitia. Yes, Mr. Carter. She's been moved from the ED. She's in room 312, third floor, west wing." "Is she? How is she?" "The nurse on the floor can update you, sir. Take the elevators down that hall." She gestured vaguely to her left, already turning her attention to the next person in line. "Third floor, west wing, room 312. The numbers repeated in my head like a mantra as I navigated the corridors. Signs pointed the way: cardiology, oncology, west wing. Each step felt heavier than the last. The smell of rubbing alcohol grew stronger. Distant beeps and the low murmur of voices echoed down the hallway. I passed rooms where families huddled, where lonely figures stared blankly at televisions bolted to the wall. Every door felt like a portal into someone else's crisis. My own crisis waited behind room 312. Part of me wanted to turn back, to run out of the hospital and pretend the call never came. But I couldn't. I had to see her. I had to know. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. 308, 310. Finally, 312. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear a low murmur from inside, too indistinct to make out words. My hand hovered over the smooth, cool wood of the door. Taking a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay beyond, I pushed it open. The room was dim, lit mainly by the gray light filtering through the window and the soft glow of medical monitors beside the bed. Letitia was lying there, her eyes closed. She looked pale, smaller than usual against the white hospital sheets. An IV line snaked into her arm, and a bandage was taped across her forehead, partially hidden by her dark hair fanned out on the pillow. Relief washed over me, sharp and potent. She was alive. She looked peaceful, asleep maybe. But the relief was instantly choked off, strangled by what else I saw. Standing beside the bed, his back partially to me, was a man. He wasn't a doctor or a nurse. He was tall, dressed in expensive-looking casual clothes, his hand resting gently on the bed rail near Letitia's shoulder. He leaned down slightly, his posture conveying a quiet intimacy, a familiarity that sent ice water through my veins. He turned his head slightly as the door clicked softly shut behind me, his eyes meeting mine. Recognition wasn't immediate, but it was there. A face I vaguely knew from one of Letitia's office parties months ago. Someone she'd introduced briefly, Mark, a colleague from another department, she'd said. He looked surprised to see me. Then his expression shifted to something guarded, uncomfortable. He hadn't been in the car, surely. He looked unharmed. So why was he here? Already here? Before me? Had they called him? Had she asked for him? The questions hammered at me, drowning out the steady beep of the heart monitor. He straightened up slowly, taking a small step back from the bed, his hand dropping from the rail. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. He just looked at me, a silent acknowledgement passing between us in the sterile quiet of the room. He knew why I was looking at him like that. He knew what his presence here meant. Letitia stirred slightly, a soft groan escaping her lips, her eyelids fluttering, but not opening. The sound drew my attention back to her, back to the reason I had rushed here in the first place. My wife, hurt, lying in a hospital bed. But the image was fractured now, overlaid with the undeniable presence of this other man standing vigil beside her. The colleague, Mark, here before her husband. The cold dread that had shadowed my drive solidified into a crushing certainty. The conference was a lie, the late nights, the hushed calls, the distance. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. My breath hitched. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, suffocating. Shock, cold and sharp, pierced through the worry and the confusion. My world, the one I thought I knew, the one I had been desperately trying to hold together, simply ceased to exist in that moment. It dissolved into the hum of the machines and the unbearable weight of his presence beside her bed. I couldn't feel the floor beneath my feet, just a hollow, ringing silence in my ears. Mark took another involuntary step back, creating more space between himself and the bed, between himself and my wife. His hands twitched at his sides, unsure where to rest. He looked like a guest caught somewhere he shouldn't be, which I suppose was exactly what he was. "David," he finally managed, his voice low, almost a mumble. I heard what happened. Came as soon as I could." Heard what happened? How? The hospital had only just called me, her husband, her emergency contact. The timeline didn't add up unless he was already with her or nearby. The marketing conference lie solidified in my mind, hard and ugly. "How did you hear?" I asked. My voice was flat, devoid of inflection. I wasn't shouting, wasn't accusing, not yet. I just needed the facts, the pieces of this shattered picture. He shifted his weight, avoiding my gaze, looking towards the monitors, the window, anywhere but at me. A mutual friend called. Someone from the office heard the scanner traffic, knew her car. His explanation trailed off, flimsy and unconvincing. Scanner traffic? Which friend? It sounded rehearsed, a poorly constructed lie offered up in panic. My eyes drifted back to Letitia. Her face was pale, but her breathing seemed even, rhythmic, timed with the soft electronic pulse of the monitor beside her. The bandage on her forehead looked stark against her dark skin. Seeing her lying there, vulnerable, still tugged at something deep inside me, a protective instinct honed over 15 years of marriage. But it was tangled now, choked by the presence of the man standing awkwardly near the door. "You got here fast," I stated, letting the silence hang after the words. It wasn't a question. Mark swallowed. "I was nearby." Nearby, of course he was. Not an hour north at some fictional conference. He was nearby, downtown, with my wife. The unspoken truth filled the small room, thick and suffocating. Letitia moaned again, louder this time. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy and unfocused. They scanned the room slowly, settling first on Mark, lingering there for a fraction of a second. I saw a flicker, confusion, maybe fear, before her gaze drifted towards me, standing near the foot of the bed. "David?" Her voice was a weak thread of sound, laced with pain. I moved closer, instinct taking over. "I'm here, Letitia. Just relax. You were in an accident." My hand automatically went to rest on her arm, careful to avoid the IV line. Her skin felt cool. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. Her eyes darted back towards Mark, then to me again. The effort seemed to exhaust her, and her eyelids slid closed once more. But I had seen it. The recognition, the dawning awareness of both of us in the room. There was no surprise that Mark was there, only that I was too. Just then, the door opened wider and a nurse bustled in, clipboard in hand. She was brisk and efficient, her focus entirely on Letitia. "Mr. Carter?" she asked, glancing at me briefly before turning her attention to the monitors. "Yes," I confirmed. She made notes on her chart, checked the IV drip. "Doctor will be in shortly to speak with you both. Her vitals are stable. Concussion seems mild. Some bruising, possibly a fractured wrist. We're waiting on the final imaging results." She spoke quickly, professionally. She then looked pointedly at Mark, who still lingered near the door. "Sir, if you wouldn't mind waiting outside? Family only in here for now while we finish the assessment." Mark nodded quickly, looking relieved to have an excuse to leave the charged atmosphere of the room. "Of course, David. I'll be right out here if you need anything." He shot me a look I couldn't decipher. Apology, pity, guilt, before slipping out the door, letting it click softly shut behind him. Need anything? From him? The absurdity of it was almost laughable. The nurse finished her checks. "Just try to rest, Mrs. Carter. Call Buttons right here if you need anything." She gave me a brief, sympathetic smile. The doctor should be no more than 10 or 15 minutes. And then she too was gone, leaving me alone with my wife and the wreckage of our life. Silence descended, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. I pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed and sank into it, the plastic cool beneath my hands. I looked at Letitia's sleeping face. 15 years. We'd built a life together, a home, careers, shared jokes, complicated histories. We'd weathered storms before, financial stress, disagreements about parenting, the death of my father. I thought we were strong, built on a solid foundation, but it was all a lie. How long had this been going on? Mark had been here, waiting, before me. That spoke volumes. This wasn't new. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was something planned, hidden, a parallel life she had been living alongside ours. The marketing conference, the late nights, the evasiveness, it wasn't stress. It was him. My gaze fell on her left hand resting on the sheet. Her wedding ring glinted faintly in the dim light. The simple gold band suddenly looked like a prop, a costume piece in a play where she had been performing the role of my wife while her heart belonged elsewhere. Anger began to bubble beneath the shock, cold and sharp. Not a hot, explosive rage, but a deep, chilling fury at the depth of the deception. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had made a fool of me. She had let me worry about our distance, let me question myself, let me try to fix something she had already broken beyond repair. I thought about the plans I reviewed just hours ago, the intricate details of load-bearing walls and structural integrity. My own life structure had just failed catastrophically. The foundation I thought was solid rock was nothing but sand, washed away by lies I hadn't let myself see clearly until now. Her purse sat on the small table beside the bed. A corner of something bright pink peeked out from the unzipped side pocket, a hotel room keycard holder. Not from the hotel chain associated with the conference she was supposed to be attending. My stomach twisted again. Where had they been going, or where had they just come from? The steady beep of the monitor seemed to mock me. Beep, lie, beep, deception, beep, betrayal. Each pulse measured the steady rhythm of a heart that had been lying to me, perhaps for months, perhaps for years. I looked at her face again, searching for the woman I married. But all I saw was a stranger concealed behind a familiar facade. The love I felt, the 15 years of shared life, felt like a phantom limb, a persistent ache where something vital used to be, now amputated without warning. The doctor would be here soon. He would talk about fractured wrists and mild concussions. He would use medical terms to describe the physical damage. But what words were there for this? For the complete implosion of trust, the annihilation of a shared future? There was no fixing this, no patching the cracks. The entire structure was compromised. It had to be demolished and cleared away before anything new could even be contemplated. Mark waiting outside, Letitia lying here, the hotel keycard. It wasn't just evidence. It was the final verdict. My mind felt strangely calm now, the initial shock giving way to a cold, hard clarity. I knew what I had to do. There was no going back, no salvaging this. It was over. The life we had built together ended the moment I pushed open that door and saw him standing beside her bed. I reached out, my fingers hovering over her hand, over the gold band. I didn't touch her. I just looked at the ring, the symbol of promises she had broken so completely. The beeping continued, steady, indifferent. My own heart felt like it had stopped. I was just numb, hollowed out, standing in the ruins. What now? The question echoed in the sterile silence. There was no easy answer, only the hard, unavoidable truth. The silence in the room pressed in, heavy and absolute, despite the steady electronic rhythm from the machine. I withdrew my hand, letting it fall back into my lap. Touching her felt wrong now, like touching a stranger. 15 years evaporated in the space of an hour, leaving behind only the cold ash of betrayal. I thought back to our wedding day. Letitia had looked radiant, her eyes bright with what I had believed was love and shared dreams. We'd stood before our friends and family, making promises, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. The words felt like shards of glass in my memory now. She had recited them, maybe even believed them at the time, but somewhere along the way, worse had arrived, not as an external misfortune, but as a choice she made, deliberately and repeatedly. And sickness and health? It seemed Mark had beaten me to that part of the vow today. The irony was bitter. I, the husband, the one legally bound and emotionally invested for a decade and a half, had been the second person notified, the second person to arrive. Her colleague was here first. It told me everything I needed to know about my place in her life. I wasn't her primary contact anymore, not in the ways that truly mattered. My mind, detached now, started moving towards logistics, lawyers, division of assets, the house, telling the kids, God, the kids. How do you explain this to a 12-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son? How do you tell them their mother, the center of their world, had broken their family? The thought sent a wave of nausea through me, colder than the initial shock. This wasn't just about me and her anymore. Her choices had ramifications that would ripple outwards, scarring lives beyond our own. The door opened again, and a man in a white coat entered, carrying a tablet. He looked tired but focused, extending a hand towards me. "Mr. Carter, I'm Dr. Ramirez." I stood automatically, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, professional. "David, how is she?" "Overall, relatively fortunate," he began, glancing at the monitors and then back at me. "She has a concussion, mild as concussions go, but we'll need to monitor her. There's a hairline fracture in her left wrist. We'll get that splinted. Significant bruising along her side and shoulder from the seatbelt and impact, which will be painful for a while. No internal bleeding, which is the main thing we were checking for." I nodded, processing the information clinically. Fracture, concussion, bruising, physical injuries that would heal, unlike the other damage done today. "Thank you, Doctor." "She mentioned she was heading to a conference up north?" Dr. Ramirez asked conversationally, still looking at his tablet. "Lucky the accident happened where it did, closer to our trauma facilities." My jaw tightened. Yes, lucky. The lie, repeated even now, felt like another small twist of the knife. Did the doctor know? Did Mark tell him the same story? Did it even matter? Letitia stirred again as the doctor gently checked her pupils with a small light. Her eyes opened, clearer this time. She looked at Dr. Ramirez, then her gaze found mine again, lingering. There was fear in her eyes now, but also a question. What did I know? What was I going to do? "David," she whispered, her voice raspy. I met her gaze, holding it steady. I didn't offer comfort, didn't rush to reassure her. The automatic responses of a concerned husband were gone, replaced by a cold, quiet appraisal. She seemed to recognize the shift, the distance in my eyes. Her own gaze flickered away, down towards the sheet bunched near her waist. She knew that I knew. Dr. Ramirez finished his examination. "All right, Letitia, you just rest. The nurse will be back soon to get that wrist sorted out. Mr. Carter, do you have any questions?" "No, Doctor. Thank you." He nodded again and left, leaving us alone once more in the charged silence. Letitia didn't speak. She kept her eyes fixed on the shapeless lump her feet made under the blanket. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the vast chasm that had opened between us. I should feel something more, I thought, more rage, more grief. But mostly, I just felt empty, hollowed out, like the structure of my life had collapsed inwards, leaving only dust and debris. Mark was still out there, waiting. Waiting for what? To offer more useless platitudes? To see if he could salvage something from the wreckage he helped create? I stood up, the plastic chair scraping quietly against the linoleum floor. Letitia's head turned sharply at the sound, her eyes wide now, questioning. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I looked down at her, at the woman who had shared my bed, my life, my dreams for 15 years. The woman who was now a stranger, lying in a hospital bed with a fractured wrist and a fractured marriage. "Home," I said, the word flat, final. "I need to figure out what happens next." Her breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes, finally spilling over, tracing paths down her pale cheeks. "David, please, don't." But I couldn't listen. I couldn't engage. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to salvage. The damage was too extensive, the foundation utterly destroyed. Trying to rebuild on this poisoned ground was impossible. I turned towards the door, my steps feeling heavy but purposeful. I didn't look back. As my hand reached for the doorknob, the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor seemed to fade, replaced by a roaring in my own ears. The hallway stretched out before me, sterile and indifferent. Mark would be out there. The rest of my life, uncertain and terrifying, would be out there too. But stepping out of this room felt like the only way to start clearing the rubble, the only way to breathe again. Just breathe. That was the first step. I pulled the door open and stepped out into the brightly lit corridor. The contrast with the dimness of the room was jarring. My eyes adjusted slowly, and there he was. Mark stood leaning against the opposite wall, scrolling through something on his phone, trying to look casual, pretending he wasn't waiting specifically for me. He looked up as the door clicked shut behind me, his thumb freezing mid-scroll. His expression was wary, uncertain. He pushed himself off the wall, taking a tentative step towards me. "David, how is she doing?" I didn't stop walking. I didn't even turn my head fully towards him. "Doctor says she'll be okay," I replied curtly, my voice tight, keeping my eyes fixed on the elevators at the end of the hall. Engaging with him felt pointless, like picking through the debris of a collapsed building for salvageable items when you knew the whole structure was condemned. He was part of the wreckage, not part of the solution. "Listen, David, he started, walking alongside me now, matching my pace down the corridor. "Don't!" I cut him off, the word sharp enough to make him halt in his tracks. I didn't look back to see his reaction. I just kept walking. Each step felt like it was taking me further away from the life I knew, but also towards something necessary, something unavoidable. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. I stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. The doors started to close, cutting off the view of the hallway, of Mark standing there alone under the harsh fluorescent lights. Alone, like he deserved to be, like Letitia deserved to be. The elevator descended smoothly, the numbers above the door counting down the floors. Ground floor, lobby, parking garage, home, the kids, lawyer. The sequence of unavoidable steps laid out before me, a bleak, sterile path through the ruins. The doors opened into the familiar lobby, the low murmur of voices washing over me. I walked towards the exit, towards the automatic doors that would release me back into the gray afternoon. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious. My own world had just ended, quietly, devastatingly, in a hospital room on the 3rd floor. Now there was just the walking away. The first step was the hardest, they say, but it felt like the only step left to take, just putting one foot in front of the other, moving forward into the unknown. Numbness was a cold companion. The automatic doors hissed open, and I stepped out onto the concrete sidewalk. The air outside was cooler than I expected, damp with the promise of rain later. It carried the city smells, exhaust fumes, damp pavement, something vaguely food-like from a nearby vendor. The sounds were louder here too, the rush of traffic, a distant siren, the chatter of passers-by who were all living ordinary Tuesdays, untouched by the implosion that had just occurred in room 312. I stood there for a moment, blinking against the gray light. My car was floors above me in the parking garage. Home was miles away. The kids would be getting out of school soon. The life I was supposed to return to no longer existed. It felt like stepping off a cliff in slow motion, the ground disappearing beneath my feet, leaving only a terrifying, empty space. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. One call. I needed to make at least one call. A lawyer. That was the next logical step, the first move in dismantling 15 years. The thought felt both necessary and impossible, like trying to plan repairs while still reeling from the shock wave of an explosion. The numbness was starting to recede, replaced by a dull, heavy ache spreading through my chest. Where do I even begin? The sheer scale of the wreckage felt overwhelming. Just breathing felt like a conscious effort. The cold air bit at my lungs.